If you have anxiety and you struggle with difficulty swallowing, and I'm talking where it feels like it's completely paralyzed, you chew your food, you go to swallow, and you cannot swallow no matter how hard you try, then please stop and watch this video. I'm going to explain in this video how swallowing works, how anxiety and the nervous system completely disrupt the entire process, and how the brain and neuroplasticity take over to kind of make this a semi-permanent state so you can have this even when you don't feel anxious. Now, swallowing is way more complex than you might think, and it involves three main stages. So I'm going to go over these three stages first because it's important that we understand the body, we understand the nervous system, so that we can then understand why all this has become a problem. So the first stage is under our conscious control. It's entirely voluntary. So the first stage is where we put the food in our mouth, we chew the food, and then we use our tongue, which is controlled by the hypoglossal nerve, to push it to the back of our throat, ready for the swallowing reflex to kick in, which is the next stage. So that first stage is all under our conscious control. And none of us really have a problem with that. It's when it gets to the back of the throat that our problem kicks in. Now, the second phase is where our problem really starts. So this is the pharyngeal phase. As the food reaches the back of our throat, the swallowing reflex kicks in, or should kick in. Now, the vagus nerve plays a massive part in this, and there's also another nerve called the glossopharyngeal nerve. Now, this all coordinates the muscles in our throat to close our airways, move the food down, and to protect the trachea, so where we breathe through. Now, this is all part of the autonomic nervous system, and it's controlled by the swallowing center in part of the medulla in your brain stem, or the medulla oblongata. Now, phase 3, which again is entirely autonomic, is the esophageal phase. Now, the enteric nervous system, which is a branch of the autonomic nervous system, takes over at this point. The vagus nerve helps to control the sort of smooth muscle transitions and contractions that move the food down into the stomach, through the esophagus, down into the stomach. So this is all autonomic. But the bit we really struggle with is phase 2, kind of initiating that swallowing reflex. Now, this whole process happens pretty quickly, right? If you don't have a problem swallowing, it happens pretty quickly. And normally, you don't even think about it. You enjoy your food and everybody's happy. But anxiety can and does disrupt the entire process. So let's move on to why that happens. So let's look at why anxiety messes everything up, and it's all about the nervous system. Fear of choking is the root of all of our problems. It might be that we've choked ourselves, it might be that we've seen somebody else choke, or we've just simply read about it or heard about it. But fear of choking is ultimately the problem. Or it might just be fear of the sensations themselves, if it's not specifically a fear of choking, but generally it is. Now, the amygdala, which processes fear, starts to associate swallowing with danger. So this puts our entire nervous system on high alert. Now, in anxiety, we have a hyper focus on our sensations. It makes us hyper aware of everything we feel, and there are things like pressure in the throat, movement of the muscles, feeling that it's going down the wrong way. This awareness is heightened by a part of the brain called the insula, and that's a part of the brain that's involved in interoception, which is our body's ability to detect itself. Normal sensations feel exaggerated and very, very scary. Now, disrupted nerve signals, that's the next thing we need to talk about. Now, when you're anxious, the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the stress response or the fight and flight response that you might have heard, takes over. Now, that suppresses the parasympathetic. Now, the parasympathetic includes the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is responsible for this smooth, coordinated swallowing. So this can lead to a breakdown in timing and coordination of the swallowing reflex. Now, I know you might all say, but I get it when I'm not anxious. I'll talk about that as well. Muscle tension as well in the neck. Now, obviously, the muscles in the neck are integral to swallowing. So if these are all tense and the surrounding muscles in the throat are all tense due to sympathetic nervous system activation, then this tension can make swallowing very, very difficult and make the throat feel blocked. Now, when swallowing feels difficult, this is where our behavior comes in. So we might start chewing our food, overly chewing our food to make it easier to swallow, only swallowing with liquid. So we might take a drink as we swallow. We might start avoiding certain foods, like bacon or fish in case it's got bones in, anything that could cause us to choke. And we might, at our worst, even only eat liquidized foods. Now, all of these behaviors, avoidance and safety behaviors, reinforce in the amygdala that swallowing equals danger. Swallowing is dangerous. We could choke, we could die. And the amygdala, the fear response, has one job, and that's to keep you safe. There is another behavior as well that you could be doing, which is avoiding eating alone, only eating when somebody's there in case you choke and you need somebody to save you. Now, let's move on to sensitization and neuroplasticity, because this plays a vital role in the whole thing becoming a permanent, I was going to say permanent or semi-permanent problem that persists with us. So let's talk about what's actually happening in the brain and the nervous system. Now, anxiety causes sensitization of everything, right? But the swallowing reflex is what we're talking about at the moment. Anxiety causes sensitization of the swallowing reflex. Sensory nerves, like the glossopharyngeal nerve, send signals to the brain stem, which interrogates them in the swallowing center of the medulla oblongata. In an anxious state, this process becomes overactive and amplified. Normal signals are being amplified, making them feeling overwhelming to the interoception system. Now, over time, this creates something called maladaptive neuroplasticity, or what I'm calling maladaptive neuroplasticity, which is where the brain learns to associate swallowing with danger. The amygdala stores this fear as a strong emotional memory, and the insula and the prefrontal cortex keep your focus on this entire process. Why? To keep you safe. We're telling it it's dangerous through our behavior. Remember, I talked about those safety behaviors and avoidance behaviors when it comes to eating and this fear of choking. Now, the vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic, should calm this whole process down, but it becomes suppressed by chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, and this makes swallowing feel delayed, uncoordinated, and even temporarily impossible. So you can see that swallowing is a very complex reflex, okay? And the nervous system is integral to this entire process, specifically the autonomic nervous system. Now, in anxiety, over a period of time, this maladaptive neuroplasticity takes place where we associate physical feelings inside of the body or physical behaviors that we're wanting to do, like swallowing. We perceive it all as danger, as dangerous. And the fear response learns to keep us safe, but it only learns that through what we tell it through our behavior. So in the case of swallowing, the initial fear, which is the catalyst right at the beginning, this fear of choking, generally, it might be fear of the sensations itself, but generally it's fear of choking, starts to grow and grow and grow over time. And as it grows, so too do our safety behaviors and avoidance behaviors. The more we avoid, the more we perform safety behaviors when it comes to swallowing, the worse it all gets. And sensitization of the nervous system, which causes the signals to fire completely erratically throughout the entire nervous system, causes a complete dysregulation of what is normal autonomic processes of the nervous system. Now, I hope you can see that it's a very complex process, and nervous system dysregulation and the erratic nature at which the signals are firing between our autonomic nerves are the root of all this problem. Now, I would swear blind to anybody that I have swallowing paralysis, that I cannot swallow. But really what it is, it's uncoordinated, it's delayed, and it's because of all of this erratic nature that's going on inside of the nervous system. But believe me, I've had times where I just cannot swallow even my favourite foods. So what can we do about it? The only thing we can do is essentially a form of exposure therapy. We have to face this fear of choking. And the only way to do that is to drop all of the safety behaviours and all of the avoidance behaviours that we've introduced whilst eating. We also need to be careful of our reactions when we get this feeling, oh my God, I'm choking, where we might suddenly jump up or go and run and get a glass of water, or we might do behaviours like this or stamping our feet to try and get the food to go down. Try and stop all that as well, because we need to show the brain, we need to challenge this belief that we cannot swallow. I hope this has helped some people. I'll catch you all soon. Take care.